Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Sam Hyde. It seems to me like Sam Hyde has drunk the concoction. He has become Mr. Hyde. No longer is it the simple dog whistles, the small little things of talking about how white people are persecuted, which there's nothing wrong with saying that, but then flipping it around and saying that we need to get rid of those people in order to protect these people, and this is the plan A, B, C, and then it turns into a forum post on Stormfront. Now, in my opinion, I think Sam Hyde has a right to his opinion. I hate when YouTube or other websites just remove people from the platform as if that somehow destroys the idea. In the past, he expressed, even when talking to iDubbbz, that he feels like there's no point in even expressing himself or saying anything because his platform will get demonetized, he'll get smoten off the internet, and him existing online almost feels like a blip as opposed to anything that's worthwhile. But recently, he's been posting a lot more videos, and I noticed this. He's been posting a lot more videos where he's been a little bit more louder with his political views. He's been a little bit more kind of almost like a lot of people. I hate to compare him to Tucker Carlson, but Tucker Carlson is someone who has made videos in the past, and he's been very subtle with his things about AIPAC and associations with the United States, where he goes, isn't it weird that a group of people get funded and can influence politics? And then from that, he realized his audience was too stupid, bunch of boomers. He started spoon-feeding them, saying, it's weird that a foreign nation is directly contributing to our policies. And similar with Sam Hyde, it seems like he's coming out of the closet a little bit. He's coming out of his shell a little bit. He's expressing himself a little more. And in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, he espouses some opinions and he has some subscriptions that I have misalignments with, to say the least. I like Sam Hyde. I think he's a funny person. I think his content is pretty funny. I even was on his side when he was beefing with Anthony Fantano and they had that rap beef going on. So it's hard for me to say that I want to just completely dismiss him. But I'll be honest, he says things that are very cookie cutter Stormfront opinions. And the two things he said in his most recent video where he talked about two civilizations, which in itself is a dog whistle. Like that, every 4chan chud saw that and they go, obviously, the American European genius mind versus the African mud hut Sigma beta male. So in this video of two civilizations, he very clearly makes two statements. One that is kind of weird is that he talks about how these other civilizations, specifically, he actually mentions in name the Congo. He says, oh, when these people went to the Congo and went to explore deep into the Congo, they were there for the first time and they had no real reason to lie. They're honest people. They're just telling their opinions. And they said that they were savages, they were terrible people, and that these are the type of people we want to import and we need to protect against that.
If you want to know how bad it was in like Congo, Africa, or wherever, whatever region of the world you want to know how bad it really was, read the accounts from the first explorers who went there. Because these are guys, like there's no motivation to lie. They're just like British guys mostly who were just they were so shocked by the state of human savagery that it chills you to read this stuff.
Now, making an analogy of hundreds of years ago to today, and then somehow trying to mix in a little bit of eugenics and a little bit of like basic Stormfront opinion is not one-to-one. And also what he said is completely incorrect in the sense that, ironically enough, there's a book called, I think it's called Unearthing Darkness. And there was also a book called Leopold's Ghost. And Leopold's Ghost is a little bit more of a monograph, and it basically lays out how Leopold, in my opinion, he's basically African Adolf. He literally pretended to be an abolitionist. He went to the Congo, used them for rubber resources, cut off people's hands, cut off children's hands. And earlier in the book, it actually talks about early travelers that went to the Congo. And ironically enough, this is going to sound crazy, they had their own civilization, they had their own feudal system, they had their own kings, monarchy, whatever you may say, and they weren't living in mud huts, they weren't just there being savages. And not only that, later on, when Africa embraces Christianity, you kind of show the barbarism of the Europeans, where King Alfonso sends his son to Europe to go study, and then at the same time has to write letters to the King of Portugal begging him to stop being so belligerent in the slave trade and persecution of his people. Despite him being a Christian and someone who views himself as an equal to another monarch, he is in a subservient position, and Portugal, being in the power position, could care less and disregards his Christianity and his royalty because they can. So you want to talk about these people and their ideas. It seems to me like people who have paler skin in Europe have a tendency to enslave people. And although, even in the United States as well, although they convert to Christianity, they're not part of the same Eucharist. They're not part of the same body of Christ. It's okay to subjugate them because they're darker than you. So first of all, that's a complete crock of bull, a bull saying that the Congolese are somehow savages and these people have no reason to lie. Yeah, bro, because someone from the 1900s that has a biased view, or 1800s even, this is earlier than that, has a biased view of the world and society. They have no reason to lie. That just because they're not lying and they think that they're telling the truth doesn't mean that they're a objective source of truth. It's their primary source, it's their information. But it doesn't mean that if people went to Africa and saw like black people dancing, they're like, look at these savages, they're terrible. They have no reason to lie. Why would they lie? That, in my opinion, is someone who's selecting things or doing things at best to just bolster their argument. I don't really know what he was going for there, but that's just a quick dismissal because I feel like he didn't give much context. And immediately when he said the Congo, I literally thought of Leopold. And earlier than that, I thought of the early expeditions into Africa, where if it wasn't for, you know, the cure for malaria, they wouldn't have gone even deeper. But once they got that, oh boy, it turned into a whole lot of slavery, a whole lot of indentured servitude. And of course, the meme is that the Africans sold themselves into slavery. Yes, there were African people who took prisoners of war, and they did take part in that, but that does not then absolve the individuals from Europe going there and subjugating those people. And again, here's a very great example. King Alfonso, son becomes Christian, goes to Europe, doesn't get treated the way that you would think that a good Christian would get treated. And the king actually wrote a letter. These people can write, shocker, these people can read, and said, hey, what's going on here? We're Christians, what's the problem? And of course, you know, the people in Europe said, it is what it is, king. I can't help you. Your skin's a little too dark for me to consider you a Christian. And then the second thing that Sam Hyde says, and he said this multiple times, and from his context, I almost see where he's coming from because he brings it up whenever Vivek Ramaswamy is brought up, and he's literally the king of cringe. And again, let me stress this enough. A lot of the opinions and a lot of the things that Sam Hyde has said, I agree wholeheartedly. His Elon Musk video was a really good video talking about how, you know, you talk about GDP and you talk about gross domestic product, and why isn't that we don't just bring in 1 billion Indian people or 1 billion Chinese people to the United States and our GDP will be amazing? Does that mean America is great? If our GDP is high, does that mean everything is amazing? And I think it's one of those things where it kind of cuts through the whole like Republican fiscal conservativity, the cookie cutter capitalist view. It's like, listen, I understand shareholders' values matter. Every day I wake up, I go to work and I think of the shareholders. But at some point in time, you got to realize that a lot of countries are investing in the United States and exploiting the United States. And at the same time, in their own country, for some reason, Finland has like a happy score of 1 billion. And their GDP is never brought up when it comes to the happy score. So I think Sam Hyde, when he says what I'm about to say, there's some context behind it, but at face value, I find it hard to agree with, where he simply says that America is not a collection of ideas.
If America becomes 95% non-white, would it still be America?
Of course it would.
Yeah.
Yes, it would.
Big time.
Would it be more America than even, because it is a melting pot?
I don't think it would be anything more or anything less. I think that there's like a white stigma.
So America is an idea to you?
I think so. I really do. You have to have that feeling of what America is to enjoy it, to want it, to, you know, seek it out for the people that are coming here from another country.
If 14 million Americans moved to Puerto Rico, would it still be Puerto Rico?
You would sink.
It would still be Puerto Rico. I mean, the ethnicity is what you're looking for.
I didn't say ethnicity, I just said nationality.
The ethnicity of the United States is the melting pot. That's where the melting pot comes in. It's all ethnicities, every ethnicity.
That these people, Vivek Ramaswamy, Elon Musk, when he wants H-1B workers, will simply say that America is in a collection of ideas. We can import a zillion people and America will still be America. And this thing is kind of brought up very like off the cuff, in your face, quick, you know, we'll import 1 billion Somalis and then we'll still be America, right? Of course, being sarcastic. But he says, and he brings it up multiple times with multiple people and kind of makes them sound irrational. At least that's the way it's framed, usually the way I see it, where he says, is America a collection of ideas? Is it? Yes or no? And it's actually a double-edged sword. And the reason why it's a double-edged sword is because the way the question is framed is that you're basically dog whistling and saying that America is for Americans, and what an American is a white, Orthodox Christian American. We're going to go back to the Naturalization Act of 1792, where in order to be an American, you need to be a naturalized white citizen. That we have Supreme Court cases like Takeo Ozawa versus United States, where a Japanese American lived in America for 20 years, loved America, and the Supreme Court looked at him and said, you're not white, you cannot be American. And Takeo Ozawa said in that court statement, which I repeat multiple times, because again, this isn't some liberal meme. This isn't some, oh, what a happy coincidence. There are patriot people who are not born in the United States. They may immigrate to the United States. They may be from immigrant parents. They subscribe to the ideology of the Constitution. They subscribe to the ideologies of the Republic. And he said very eloquently, he said, by name, I am not an American, but by heart I am. And by name, Benedict Arnold is an American, but by heart he is not. By name, I am not an American, but by heart I am. So you go ahead and play the race game and say that you need to be a white Christian male. Okay, go ahead and go in the house with Benedict Arnold, someone who was a British loyalist. He was loyal to the crown. He's someone whose skin was probably whiter than the sun. And he is someone who is a textbook traitor and someone who didn't subscribe to the idea of the Republic and someone who literally betrayed the early United States in order to get Mr. King McGee, I don't even remember his name, on his side. And he was a textbook loyalist and a textbook traitor. And I think that's a perfect example here where it's a counter argument that makes it collapse. And the reason why I think it makes it collapse is because you say things like, oh, America's just a collection of ideas. And it's such a gotcha moment, because if I say Spain is a collection of ideas, right now, the reason why Spain is called Spain, it's not called Andalus, is because there's not enough Muslims there. If you put more Muslims and imported 1 billion Muslims, it would turn back into the Muslim Spain known as Andalus. That may or may not be true based on the ideologies that people subscribe to. And the thing that he brought up even in his video, he's talking about how there's like a mega mosque in Texas. There's enclaves of Muslims in Dearborn. They take over the local government. They have a strong presence in the local area. And then it turns into a third world, and it turns into Europe, where it's just a monster case scenario. And I think it's ironic that he brings up Europe, because in Europe, I think that their problems are very different than the United States problems. The United States has a lot of weird, and again, this is the thing where you get into the situation where it turns into a gray area, because people bring up things that are like textbook Stormfront arguments, but it is a weird thing in the United States where there's a lot of criticism of white Christian men, like a lot of weird criticism where the media says certain things about white Christian men. They propose that the problem with society is toxic masculinity, and it's something that does feed into the whole reason why Donald Trump even became president, because they look at him as a messiah. They look at him as someone who's going to save the world. Meanwhile, he's just a textbook neocon, turns out, shocker. So it's not like they're paranoid to the point where it's like, it makes no sense. I don't agree with it. I don't think it's the right answer. But to say that there isn't some type of weird type of anti-white Christian male agenda in the United States when it comes to certain media outlets would be biased, because it exists. It's there. But at the same time, it doesn't then mean that it's okay to then be like, oh man, we better make sure we don't get any more Muslims in here. Better not get any more Jews in here. Because I never really hear the argument against Mormons in Utah, who, in my opinion, is another weird example where you have this enclave of people. They're all similar religious beliefs. They're all similar religious actions. They have their own sheriff department where the people that are in the community there, they have their own local government, and it turns into a Mormon estate, right? But because it's been there so long, you're just like, it is what it is. Same thing with Chinatown. Like in New York, you have Chinatown, hella Chinese people. You go there, they're speaking Chinese. They ain't gonna talk to you in English. But it's been so long that it's like, it is what it is. You kind of just brush it off. And again, these are gotcha arguments. These are quick. Oh, what happens if we import 1 billion Somalis? Quick, go, go, go. It's like, what? How about you talk about it? How about you espouse a little bit? How about we make a little bit of word salad, which people hate to do because they turn into semantics, but it does matter. There is a difference between saying that you're worried about American core values being threatened because you have an import of ideologies. And that's the thing here. Again, I believe it's ideology, where you have people who come and they might not agree with the Constitution. They might not agree with the Republic. They might not agree with these things. And then if they become the majority, then the nation changes. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like if you imported, 10,000 Somali people or 10,000 Kurdish people or 10,000 any people and put it in a community that originally had 2,000 people, it's going to shift everything. It's going to change everything. Everything is going to be very different because now the majority becomes a minority and things change and things shift. But again, that's not because of the color of the skin. That's not because of the religion. That's not necessarily even because of the upbringing. It's because they don't subscribe to this idea. And the whole idea of being an American, becoming an American, of what Ronald Reagan said is that the United States is the only place where someone can come and become an American. The idea being that you embrace the United States, the culture, the ideas, the ideals, you embrace it and you become it. And again, the basic facts here are that Sam Hyde and other people have said this very subtle dog whistle, but it is very cutting, is to say that, oh, they want to import H-1B visas, take money out of American pockets, which is true, and it's an anti-white agenda. It's so funny to me that historical political rhetoric that existed 50, 100, 200 years ago is being repeated today. This is verbatim the same exact statements that Americans used to say when they would talk about Black Americans coming into their workforce, and they would say things like, we're losing money in our unions and our workers because Black people are coming in. The cheap Black labor is here. Instead of looking at CEO Mr. Monopoly, they're like, these Black people are here. And there's writings, there's a writing from A. Philip Randolph talking about the workers' class struggle. The idea being that Black, white, you are a worker. You're part of the same union. You're part of the same working process. But because racism is such a good tool, it's such a great tool, religion, racism, now the new thing in the past 20 years is sexuality somehow, transgenderism, LGBT, it's all a big distraction to pit people against each other and make politicians have an easy time. Put that car in neutral, don't even put it in drive, push it down the hill, because now you're arguing about identity politics. You're arguing about these things that really don't matter. Healthcare, don't worry about that. Foreign policy, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Don't even say that word. Bleep that out. Bleep out Einstein. Don't worry about that. Focus on these things that technically doesn't really dictate policy, but we're going to make it seem like it does. And when you say things like, these H-1B workers are coming in, they obviously want non-white Americans. And it's like, bro, do you understand these CEOs, these companies, this corporate ideologies, and these ideologues basically look at human beings as numbers. You look at Palantir CEO talk about human beings. He starts talking about them like they're soy-based life forms, where they're literally just units in the matrix to make the machine move, and you're making it a racial thing when they could not care less, and they're happy that you do it. And it's the same thing that a lot of videos lately, when it comes to criticism of a certain Middle Eastern country that has a BB leader, will start shifting more anti-Semitic, and it's actually falling right into the playbook of what that Zionist state wants, which is to say that if you are against this nation, you're against all the people of Judaism, and that in order to protect the people of Judaism, you need to protect the state. It's, again, you're falling into this argument where you're actually helping them, going into this whole racial play and this whole argument of anti-whiteness. It's actually helping them because they go, look, I mean, H-1B workers, we want to be inclusive, DEI, and then the people who are against us is people like this who are anti-multiculturalism. Meanwhile, all they care about is just a cheap worker and cheap labor. So when Sam Hyde says this a lot, he says this a lot, where America is just a collection of ideas, and it's like, it's both true that the United States of America is based on the Constitution, it's based on the Republic, it's based on the basic principles of John Locke, the idea of the spirit of the laws, the idea of these different political buzzwords that mean things. They mean things. It means something to be part of a lineage of the Roman Republic. It means something to have a system of laws and codes of ethics. It means something for the United States of America to have a legal and ethical system that Americans subscribe to, and that's what makes an American. And again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like importing a bunch of people that don't subscribe to that ideology is not going to change the landscape. And it also is an interesting idea, and even something that if you were to discuss even further, is to say that if you import so many people and they subscribe to different things, is it the same thing? It's the same thing as when Alexander the Great marched east from Macedonia and Greece, and as he went along the way, he had people who embraced Greek cultures and traditions, and they called it Hellenism. Now, is that the exact same thing as Greece? No, it's not. Did they subscribe to Greek ideals and become more Greek? Yeah, they did. So it is a culmination, it is a mixture, it is something that is not purely the same thing, but at the same time, what exactly are you trying to espouse? Are you saying that someone is an American has to have a certain complexion? Is it that they have to be part of some type of religious group? Is it that they have to subscribe to some type of ideology? I mean, in the perfect world, you would take a test and you would say you subscribe to the Republic, you subscribe to the Constitution, you subscribe to these ideas if you don't leave, in a perfect world. But part of the United States is that you can have these different ideas, you can have these different things, but then what happens if you have people in power, people in certain areas that feel a different way? What happens then? Again, it sounds like semantics and word salad, but it matters to be very articulate and very clear, because by simply saying, oh, America's a collection of ideas, and dismissing it completely and saying that America is what it is, and you make it simple. And it's something that Supreme Court justices have even done in the past, where they would have court cases where they had like Singh versus United States, when an Indian person said, I'm from the Caucasus Mountains, I'm Caucasian, I should be white. And the judge just looks at me and goes, I know a white person when I see a white person. You're not a white person. Wow, thanks. A genius statement. We can use this in future court cases and precedent, and we'll just leave it up to a gut reaction. So from the video that recently came out, and these more politically charged videos from Sam Hyde, I applaud his honesty. I applaud the fact that he's putting these pieces of information out there. But at the same time, it really does, some of the things that he's saying, whether it be, a little bit more exaggerated or just straight on a basic opinion, are more basic bitch Stormfront opinions, where it's all about anti-whiteness. It's all about this entire, conspiracy by a certain group of people to ruin the white agenda and white people. And that once you get rid of the white people, you can then just have a mulatto mongrel race of people running wild in the United States, which is not true. It's just not true. The reason why I paused for a second is because I literally just remember that statement came from Burning, Mississippi, and it really goes back to the whole idea of just basic racism and basic ethics. But I think I'll end it like this. I think that what it boils down to is what Sam Hyde is trying to do is he's trying to say that America is for Americans, and to be an American is not simply to import someone and then upload a data file in their head and now they're an American. There's more to it. There's more culture to it. And in my opinion, the people he's talking about are literal Satan individuals, such as Elon Musk when he's on his H-1B tip, as well as Vivek Ramaswamy, who literally wrote an entire too long didn't read post of, oh, Indian kids learn piano when they play math games. Meanwhile, American kids, they just sit at home and watch TV and eat Cartoon Network food. And it's like, bro, first of all, you're talking hella smack about the United States of America, and you're trying to run and be a politician in the United States of America. How about have some decency, bro? Because you're coming off as a super foreigner. You can make jokes about the United States. You can say about white people and how white people crazy. But at the end of the day, you're trying to represent these people who, in all reality, there's individuals who've been in this country for hundreds of years, from the inception of it, or early 1900s, from coming from Europe during the mass immigration during that period. And you're just like, oh, we're better at the piano, so we deserve jobs. That's crazy. So you have to take it from that perspective as well. Sometimes when you're dealing with individuals like Vivek Ramaswamy, you just immediately go to the counterpoint of what they're pushing out there. And as tempting as it is to say that I know what an American is and you're not an American, it's not a great argument. And it's also something that's dangerous, because then you start subscribing to this idea and you start going down the path of what is a real American. And obviously you're not a real American. I'm a real American, and I know what a real American is. Thus then. But I think the way that you can really take it, and I think this is true, it doesn't matter if you're Christian, Jewish, Muslim, atheist, whatever. The way you can know if you're a true American is that today's April 12th. Just the other day, I got plastered at H&R Block. The federal government needs more money. You know you're an American if you're getting underpaid, overtaxed, undervalued, and gaslit into thinking $18 at the pump for a gallon of gas is normal. You know you're an American if you feel like you are marginalized. You know you're an American if you feel like times are tough and they're getting tougher. And that's the thing here. These corporations, these politicians, they love division, they love divide and conquer, and then they get to do whatever they want. They get to go put a Navy blockade in the middle of the Iran Ocean. They get to go on island trips. They get to do all this freaky stuff, and then we're sitting here talking about semantics and politics and things that in the modern era is important, but at the same time, Why is it being brought up? Is it brought up as a distraction from things that are bigger, or is it brought up for actual political theories and actual discussion? I'd say it's a 50-50 split. And in my opinion, just remember, if you're paying taxes, you're an American. Listen, if I have an IRS TIN number, I am an American. Try to deport me and I will show you my taxes. I'll say, listen, I'm not gonna lie. Immediately what I just thought of is when one of the Facebook executives, the dude who was in the social network, actually went to Brazil, renounced his citizenship, and if you do that, you don't have to pay taxes. They changed the law now, but he did that just to sell all his money and not pay taxes. That's a true parasite to the United States of America. Me, as a true American, I would have sold my Facebook shares. I would have paid the federal government. I would have said, thank you. Here you go. Take it all for all the wars you need. Don't give it to any poor people. Don't give it to any Americans. Just spend it on foreign wars. As a true American, I am proud to support a nation in the Middle East and pay all my taxes and all my dues and never ask questions. That's a true American. And if you disagree, you pay my taxes and then I'll agree with you.